Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a lip, and I'm here with a special treat for you all. I have my top 5 list for 2022. It's been a good, it's been an okay year. It's been down, we've laughed, we've cried, but I'm going to go down through the list. I went back, perused everything that I played this year. Now, this list isn't just going to be games that were released this year. This is games that I played this year. Games I videoed, filmed, and threw up on the channel. So some might have released prior to 2022, might not have got to them in time, but I think the majority of them did release during this time of year. There's no particular order in them, right? It's just my top 5, the ones that I enjoyed the most during this period of time. Now, I gotta say, I had a little trouble narrowing this one down. It was hard because this year I had covered a lot of good stuff. There was just so many to pick from, and it could have been the top 15. It could have been the top 20. I don't know. All of them were fairly good. There were a couple of stinkers on there, but for the most part, everything was really good. And especially when it got down to about the top 7 or 8, I was really having to fight to pick that top 5. But we're going to jump right into it and let you guys see what the top 5 for 2022 was. So first off, we're going to have an honorable mention. So I've started covering a lot of digital stuff here recently. Definitely been enjoying it. It's stuff that I hadn't given as much time to before, and really have enjoyed, actually. And one of the benefits is the fact that I don't have to set up a game. I always love feeling the components in my hand, but there is that little benefit of when I'm done, just push a button and I'm good. I don't have to worry about it. For our honorable mention, though, definitely Flashpoint campaign, Southern Storm, really stood out to me. I love all the aspects. I love the graphics. I love the way the combat's handled up. I did the first part so far of a tutorial series showing how to play the game. I've got the second part being worked on currently, which will delve further into the basics of the game. Not the advanced stuff, but the basics of how you're going to play everything. But in the short version, it's the standard hex and counter warfare that we've seen in so many other games set in the World War III time frame. But in this one, I will really like plotting those orders, right? Figuring out exactly where you're going to send all your units and coming up with your battle plan. And then you hit the button, you see how it all unfolds, and then you have to react to what the enemy is doing. Something like that is something that you can't really translate over into a tabletop component. You probably could get something close or similar, but not in a solitaire fashion. It would never work for solitaire gameplay, which is what I always primarily go for. Heads up, yes, of course you could do something similar in a tabletop game, but for a solo player like me, definitely enjoy it. It's one worth checking out. Like I said, Flashpoint campaigns, Southern Storm, really cool. I'm having a great time with this one. Definitely check it out. Check out my tutorial video on it and the upcoming part 2 of the tutorial video. So into the list proper, we start off with 1985 Sacred Oil. And this one is one that I've done a handful of videos on. I haven't completed my series yet. Unfortunately, due to my own disabilities and the way I move around, it's set in a separate room so I could leave it up. But some stuff got put in there and I just have trouble physically getting around in that room. So I'm going to have to wait until that stuff's moved out before I can go in there and finish all that up. But this game is, I don't even know how to describe it. It is so high end. It is such a labor of love by the designers in the work that they put into it. And you can tell that they have worked hard to generate as accurate and apt an experience as they can down into a tabletop hex and counter game. Now, the components themselves of the game really aren't going to be turning any heads. It's your standard war game fare, counters, paper maps, player age, stuff like that. Huge rule book and scenario book. I mean, friggin' huge. A lot of stuff that you have to keep track of when it comes to this, but nothing that's going to set off any alarms for you. All right. Very basic. And I'm not hating on the game. The box is actually phenomenal. One of the best components to it. But you're not coming for the component in this game. You're coming for that experience. And the experience is just so detailed. And it harks back to what I was saying earlier about the amount of study and effort and thought that went into it. But this is not a light beer and pretzels war game, not by any means. This is probably the heaviest game that I played this year. There are so many components, and they have this way that they interlock with each other, and that you have to learn this step of the game in that you have to learn this step of the game to learn that step of the game to learn that step of the game to learn that step. And every piece of the game connects to the next piece. You have things like air superiority, so you can gain control of the skies in a certain area. And then when you have that control, it's going to affect the battles that are going on underneath there. Because if you don't have air superiority, then when you try to send in your fighters or your bombers to help your ground combat, you're going to have more difficulty in accomplishing that. Maybe you're going to have to fly around in a different direction because they have control here, and you're going to have to circle around. So it's going to cut your length of your air support down. Or maybe you do have air superiority, so you're able to send in those air missions, your helicopters, your air-to-ground attackers to be able to support your ground forces as they make their advances. In this game, there's no taking just one counter and moving around thinking that's it. There's, like I said, all the pieces that have to interconnect with each other. You have to consider what this set of forces is doing, because that's going to affect this next set of forces and this set of forces. And it even expands even further with the supply lines that have their own segment of the game that just takes you off map. And now this one adds in sea forces as well. And then during all of this, they also have the fact that the war isn't happening in just these areas. That is abstracted out into this game, and the fact that what forces are being sent here. Is this a feint? Are the real forces set into Europe, or are they actually coming hot and heavy down here so they can gain control of these oil fields? You don't know what the actual plan is, and you have to kind of react to that. And this is all happening off map, but it greatly affects what's happening on map. And that's why it gives you such a deep, rich experience. But like I said, it's not for the faint of heart. This is not for someone who wants to set up a war game and play it in the evening and pack it away. You're going to have this game on your table for, I would say a week, but weeks. It's going to be there for a while, depending on what scenario you play. If you play the whole damn thing, months. It gives you so much gameplay. This one could easily stay on your table for months. You and a friend, or you by yourself, could just play it out over an extended period of time and just see how it all plays out. Really great experience. The next one on our list is easy to figure out because it's one that I've talked about plenty, and it's a miniature war game, and it's my favorite miniature war game. Might be one of my favorite games of all time. It really is up there. That, of course, is Core Space. This is Core Space Firstborn, the latest Kickstarter they had done that delivered, and it changed up everything. I think they leaned real hard into that solo or cooperative experience, because when Core Space was first released, it had two sets of pirate crews, two sets of traders, right? The player controlled minis. This one only had one, and I think that they saw that most people use the game for its solo or its cooperative experience. Not saying that the competitive experience was bad, it's definitely not. But it wasn't the prime reason people really got into it. I never tried this game competitively, and it still was one of my absolute favorite games, and that's because of the sheer amount of replayability, the sheer amount of content that you get in the box, and it's really only limited by your imagination. Obviously, I've talked about this before, But the components for this game are outstanding. It gives you that 3D terrain effect with the way the walls go together. They clip together. They create a map, right? Neoprene board comes right there you can use. And then you create the map there that has everything 3D represented thanks to its cardstock representation that you punch out, put together. You have the stasis pods. You have the loot containers, right? You have the furnaces. You have all these different components. One of my favorite games that I played recently, the key point was the control panel that my crew had to get to. But first they had to find the right key that they were looking for so they could come back, open the gate, and get out. And while they were doing this, they had to deal with a new alien menace, the Firstborn, that they had never encountered before. But on top of that, they were being chased by a bounty hunter who started going after them. And the bounty hunter was shooting everyone, trying to get to my crew. He took out some civilians who were in the area. He was attacking the Firstborn. Then he's trying to get my guys. And the thing is I'm going to continue the story. I've had the story going on and off screen now for well over a year. I think it's been like 2 years that I've had the same campaign going as my crew experiences all of these different things. And that's what I mean when I say the game is as expansive as you want it to be. Now, you can play just the missions that come with it. Every expansion, every game, every component comes with a little flip book that has scenarios in it and missions that you can play as one-off. So if you want the publisher-generated missions, right, those type of experiences, you've got them in spades. There's plenty. But if you want more of that D&D experience where the game unfolds how you want it to unfold, bam, this is it. It is everything that you want it to be. So many different types of minis, so many different types of enemies. You can incorporate other types of minis into it. It really can be anything you want. I even saw user-generated stuff about taking the Nemesis enemies from the Nemesis board game and incorporating them into core space as a alien menace that you could fight. That's what I mean. You can play this however you want it to and play it for as long as you want it to. And lastly, on top of that, the components can be used for other games as well, like 5 Parsecs from Home. Now, I'm not saying that's part of this list, but if you wanted to take these components and transfer them over, you've got a ready-made set of equipment to use in that game, right? Bam, you're good. And there's other games of that ilk, right? Things like Stalker, I forget the one that has the spacesuits in it, but regardless, you can use these components for those games as well. And the fact that it's 3D gives you that type of terrain you would need for those types of games. You're set right out of the box. That's what I mean. There's so much game in just a single box, let alone the amount of expansions that are available for this thing. Core space is just flat out a must buy. And if you're into the fantasy type stuff, definitely check out Maladum, which they are going to be kickstarting next year, hopefully soon. And that is going to be fantasy stuff. So spells, swords, shields, crossbows, skeletons, necromancers, all that type of gameplay. They're going to have that in Maladum, but based off the core space thing. So if you want sci-fi, boom, you got it in spades. If you want, swords and shields, you're going to have that now. Anything you want, you're going to be able to play. Definitely worth checking out. All right, third on the list is Assault Red Horizon. I loved this Hex Encounter war game. Freaking loved it. They tried a lot of new stuff. And at first, they had shopped around, right? Different publishers, seeing if they were interested in publishing the game. And they were getting okay bites here and there. People were interested. And then they were like, you know what? Screw it. We're going to publish it ourselves. And I am damn glad they did, because this game is awesome. Now, it's a Hex Encounter war game at a tactical skirmish level, right? There's plenty of games in that ilk. Two of my favorites, Lock and Load Tactical and Conflict of Heroes, right? I've played those plenty. And in comparison to those, Assault Red Horizon is similar in the way the game's going to be played. Okay, the components are similar quality, dice, counters, cards, all that stuff. Everything is similar to those games. So now you're asking me, okay, well, what's different about this one? What sets Assault apart from games like that? And for me, it is that order of battle, because the order of battle is controlled by the cards. And the way they have this game set up is that there are units attributed on the cards. So you'll have infantry, you'll have tanks, and you'll have artillery. And then a stack of cards for each one of those three sections, both for the Russians, both for the Germans, right? And on those cards, it'll list down so many different types of infantry, for example, and then it might have 5 standard infantry and some machine guns and maybe some trucks or an armored car on there. But all the cards are going to be different. And when you play a scenario, it tells you how many of each of those different cards you're going to draw. So you never know exactly what you're going to have. The amount of replayability that gives the game is phenomenal. I mean, no mission will ever be the same because there are units on all the different cards. Generally, the tank cards have tank units. Generally, the artillery cards have artillery type units. But you'll have some that have extra infantry or extra armored cars or maybe some tanks in there. There's a little mix and match in there. So you don't know exactly what you're going to have. You know, it'll be roughly this. And especially if you can draw the cards randomly, like a solo player like myself, draw those cards randomly, I can randomly decide what the AI is going to have. I can randomly decide what I'm going to have, but I have a scenario there laid out and I know how many cards for each side and what the mission's going to be. And then not only that, you can flip the missions, right? One attacker, defender, and then flip who the attacker and defender are, draw new cards. That gives a huge amount of replayability. There is no way you'll ever have a mission that is the same, a scenario that is the same. That's the difference between this game and others of its ilk. If you play a scenario Conflict of Heroes, it's going to be a great game, especially in the 3rd edition. Very phenomenal, really, really good. But the scenario is not going to change. You're going to have the same tanks and infantry and artillery in that mission the 3rd time that you play it as the 1st. Assault Red Horizon, it's not going to be like that. You're not going to have the same units, right? It's always going to be different, which will always give you that different experience of gameplay. Now, on top of that, though, they do have a command point structure system that is optional. You don't have to use it, but I think for solitaire play, it is really awesome to use it. And the general gist is you'll have your cards that represent your units, and then you'll have so many command tokens. And generally speaking, you'll have 1 or 2 command tokens less than you have units on the board. So you'll have to allocate those command tokens to your units and decide which ones are the most important to activate. You might really need that machine gun team to activate this turn, but then you might really need that tank unit to move up as well so they can keep pressing the assault on the enemy. Maybe you don't have enough command points and you have to pick which one is more important. Do you really need to activate those mortar teams so you can get some indirect fire going or maybe some smoke? Or can you skip that this turn and put those points somewhere else? That also adds to that replayability in this, and the fact that the game is going to play different thanks to the command points. And like I said, be different every game thanks to the order of battle and the unit generation using the unit cards. Every game's going to feel different. Assault Red Horizon, absolutely worth checking out. And they have an expansion that is coming soon with some Stuka dive bombers, and I cannot wait to check that one out. You guys stay tuned. I will be covering that when it releases because I am very excited to get this game back to the table. All right, so next on our list is going to be a game that I'm pretty sure most of you won't be surprised to see on this list. A Most Fearful Sacrifice. I've talked about it a lot, covered it a lot. What did I do? 10 videos? I can't even remember how many videos I did on this game. I did a bunch. The game's awesome. All right, first off, components through the roof. Mounted map, right? You would not expect a game of this size to be a mounted map, but it is a mounted map. And just flat out, the map is gorgeous, right? It's beautiful, huge map. It's about 4 times the size of a standard paper map when you put both pieces together, and it covers all of Gettysburg. Now, for me to have this game on my list has to tell you something, because the Civil War isn't my jam. That is not usually something that I cover. Not overly excited to cover the Civil War period. I'm usually, Pacific War, Third World War. I like that. Eastern Front, the standard fare that you see people. Sci-fi is my jam. Fantasy, old historical. But Civil War has never really been my thing. So for a game based on the Civil War, on the Battle of Gettysburg, to make my top 5 list tells you how good this game is. Like I said, components are great, but it really comes down to that blind sword system that Herman Lutman created that really takes this game to the next level, and the way that the units are going to activate and operate as you play through the game. And it does such a good job of being able to be solitaired because of that system. Just in case you don't know, real quick, you're going to have a stack of cards that have varying amounts of events or core cards, fog of war, things like that in it. And when you draw those cards, it's going to have different things happen. Generally speaking, you're looking for those core activation cards, and you're going to roll off. And depending on what your roll is, it's going to determine what units are going to be activated. You have a division play mat off to the side, and on that mat, it is going to reference to that core card that you drew. So you roll again on the division card, and you'll see whether or not you're activating one brigade, all the brigades, so the whole division, or if you're activating some artillery with it, if you have to activate them by giving them all the same order, or if you can give them orders by brigade, which is the absolute best, because that means you can give each specific brigade an order based best off of what suits them at the moment. So maybe this one needs to defend so they can rally. Maybe this one needs to attack because they're pushing the enemy back. Whatever the case may be, that's your best. But depending on your role, you might not get that. Then on top of that, when it comes to the actual combat system, it's based off a 3-dice system that 2 dice are going to reference to your combat results table, and then 1 die is going to reference to what type of damage is done. So not only do you need to roll well on the combat results table, you have to roll well on the damage table as well. And the possibility exists that you could roll so badly that the enemy actually gets to return fire back at you. So in attacking, you might end up getting attacked yourself. So it behooves you to make sure your attacks are the best possible attacks they can be. You have to be smart about it. You have to make sure your units stay close to each other. Those brigades stay right there with each other. And I found that out in my gameplay, because the only way I could really force damage through is when I got units broke off, right? If I was able to break a division in half, get them spread out a little bit, that way one or another could be picked off and not have that unit cohesion. That cohesion, staying next to each other, gave them a bonus that made it very hard to get them cracked and get them pushed back. But the whole game plays like that. As one side's trying to do that, trying to push the brigades apart, trying to break the cohesion, the other side's doing the same thing. And then on top of that, you have artillery working back and forth, firing shots at your units, firing shots at their units. You're going back and forth with it. And you can actually discard cards at the start of a turn, have less cards available to you to use as events or one-offs, so you can get some extra artillery shots. So there's always choices you can make based on what your best options are at the time. But on top of that, you have to worry about your division priority, because you have 3 priority levels to place those division cards when you're activating your units. And the ones in priority level 1, very likely to get activated. Ones in priority level 2, more than likely they're not going to get activated, but there's a chance. Priority level 3, they're probably not activating. And that's key, because you have to decide where you're going to put them. Do you focus on the attack that you've already got going on? Do you focus on bringing in those reinforcements? What choice do you make, right? 100%. It's the blind sword system that really sets this game apart, and it gives you such a thematic feel as you're playing it, and then you're playing it on top of a beautiful map. Now, I will ding the map a little bit on the fact that sometimes as you're looking at it, since it is a hand-drawn map, some of the things kind of bleed over into each other, but it's a small niggle for the level of game that you get out of this. So it's really not that big of a deal. 100% a Most Fearful Sacrifice. Really great experience. If you're a Civil War fan, it's a no-brainer. If you're not a Civil War fan like me, check out the system. Watch some of the videos I've made, some of the other videos other people have made. See how the game plays. It might make you change your mind and say, screw it. I don't care if it's about the Civil War. I want to play the game because the game's awesome. And sadly, now we are coming to the end of our list. There were a lot of people who could have been here. Honestly, I wish I could keep going because so many deserve to be on this list. Like almost, I can't even describe how many deserve to be on this list. This last game is one that I recently covered, and it had some issues. I'm not gonna lie, it had some issues, some errata for it, but it's a diamond in the rough, right? There's definitely a nugget here. And I had a lot of fun playing it. And I base this off of what did I have the most fun having on my table. And this game was absolutely a one that I had just a phenomenal time with. I did not want to take it off the table. But the bonus part is the fact that I can put it back on my table very easily and just start cranking out again anytime I want to. Of course, it's American Tank Ace. And this was just one of my favorites, right? This was awesome experience to have. Like I said, I didn't want to take it off the table. It's one of those that I like to call a roll and play. It's all about rolling the dice, letting it play out in front of you. But the difference on this one is there was so much choice given to the player. Other games of its ilk, right? Silent Victory, one of my favorites, right? It's made the list before. But in that one, you didn't have anywhere near the level of choice that you do in American Tank Ace. You had a submarine. You pretty much had to decide whether or not you were going to surface or dive and what range you were going to attack at and what torpedoes you would fire, or you're going to use your deck gun. Not a whole lot put in the player's hands. You basically had the game play itself out in front of you. American Tank Ace is in the same vein where you control X object, right? Whatever it is, a Zeppelin, a sub, a tank, and you play the game out. But this one gave you an incredible amount of choice to decide what you were going to do. And the fact that it had that battlefield board, so you weren't just worrying about, did I hit? It's what did I hit and where am I firing, right? Because there were 5 different areas surrounding the board that you could target, right? A through E. And depending on what happened, the enemy could flank up on you. You could have self-propelled guns coming on you. You could have hidden AT guns that you couldn't fire at just yet until they started zinging rounds at you. And you had to worry about whether or not you're going to try to get yourself hull down. You always want to get yourself hull down. What range you're going to attack at, because the farther you are, the harder it is for the enemy to hit you, but the harder it is for you to hit the enemy. I will give you this tip, though. Always use HE on anything that's soft. It wrecks them. But like I said, I got to ding a little bit because it is diamond in the rough in the fact that there was a fair amount of errata for it. And sadly, when I filmed this game, I had done, I think, 3 or 4 videos back to back to back because I was having so much fun with it. But they put the errata out after I'd already filmed them. So people were like, hey, this is wrong. I'm like, well, I know that now, but I didn't know it then. So, yeah. So yeah, sadly, you're going to have to check out the errata, get the rules tweaked. And I think the rules could have been fleshed out just a wee bit more before the game was released. But the experience was so fun. I had such a good time with it. I'm like, to hell with it. I don't care. I can deal with reading some errata. The game was just a blast. There were so many cool aspects to it. It's able to be expanded as much as possible, right? This is American Tank Ace. They could do Russian Tank Ace, German Tank Ace, Abrams Tank Ace. You really do whatever game you want and just keep adding new factors to it. It's just a fun game. I had a blast with it. So many different types of targets to go after, tanks, trucks, AT guns, and the fact that it wasn't just a standard mission, right? In a game like the sub game, you're pretty much attacking convoys. That's all you could do. But in this, you had attack missions, defense missions, right? There was that give and take. You could have a mission where you attacked, but then your next mission, and I actually had that when I filmed, where I had an attack mission and then I rolled, and suddenly the Germans had flipped things around and they were coming back after me now. And I had to go on the defensive, and you had to carry that mission on with the equipment that you had left, right? So any expendables that you used, right? So your main shells, your AP or your HE, your machine guns, those were unlimited. You had to reload them, but they were unlimited. But certain types of smokes or Willie Pete's or APCR, those ammos will run out. You only have so many of those shells. And if you get tagged with a defense mission like that, you're not going to have those shells reloaded before that mission. The analogy I actually came up with was that this game was like a Lay's potato chip. You can't just eat one. And it comes to it with those missions. You'll play one, you can play it quick, 15, 20 minutes, you're done. And you don't want to stop there, right? You want, let me just do one more. And that's how I ended up with so many videos of it back to back to back. Because I was like, I think I'm going to play again. Well, I'll do one more. I'll just film it. If they want to see it, I'll throw it. Whatever. Just as an excuse to keep playing the game. And that's how I knew it was a good game, because I didn't want to take it off my table. I just kept coming up with excuses to keep playing it. And I'm going to come up with an excuse again to put it back on the table because I had fun with it. Like I said, there's some errata. I'll deal with it. I don't care. It's a fun game. It's definitely worth checking out. American Tank Ace, really great one. Anyway, that's it for me for my top 5 of 2022. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am looking forward to having another top 5 for 2023. And you guys make sure to stay tuned. We're going to have some more The Long Road from Mo, Kevin, and I. We're going to play that here very soon. And we're going to have our video giveaway for our next episode of Whiskey Charlie. We're going to be giving away a handful of games, so you guys make sure you stay tuned for that as well if you want to win a little something. All right, that's going to be it for me. You guys take care. I will catch you in the next one. Okay, so to finish things off here, I realized I had actually forgotten one game, and it's because it wasn't on my regular list, my regular playlist, and it's because we had done the live playthroughs. So I had actually missed this one, and it wasn't in the general running of contention, right? Not one that I had just filmed by myself. I filmed it with Kevin, Mo, and Mark. And I had so much fun with this one, I had to toss it in as a special add-on. And this, of course, is The Long Road, which I haven't got to play physically yet, but I have played the digital version of it on Vassal with these guys, and we just had a blast. Mark was nice enough to come up with a scenario that we could play together, the three of us, where we were fighting zombies and werewolves, and I had my forces, Mo had his forces, and Kev, and we were all just going at it, and it was just a fun game. For me, the real strength of this one comes down to the extra elements that are in the game, because like I said, there's plenty of games out there that have, hex encounter war, third World War type combat. I mean, there's plenty, right? Lots of good games out there. But there's not a whole lot of games that bring a paranormal aspect into it. And I think a good chunk of the wargaming community isn't into that. The sci-fi or the fantasy, paranormal stuff. But I love that. I love trying new things. I love having vampires and werewolves as part of my game. And I'm going to have a T-72 squaring off against a huge bulking werewolf that's trying to tear the turret off and smash the troops with it. That to me is just the coolest aspect of this game. But I will say that the mechanics of the game are very sound. I like the way that everything flows smoothly, operates basically like you've seen plenty of other war games operate, with a combat results table and the like, but the information on the counters allows you to see what column you should be rolling on very easily. If you're firing on like a soft target, you're just going to look at whatever your firepower is, and that's your column, barring any type of modifiers. Like if you have extra units, it's going to give you a couple of column shifts, or if they're in some terrain with some cover, it's going to give them a couple of column shifts. But then when it comes into armored fighting vehicles, that's an aspect of a game that can give you so many issues, right? Depending on how they're trying to work in armor. And I love the way it's handled in this game, in that armor has a value, and you're simply going to subtract that value from whatever the firepower is of the unit attacking, and that tells you what column you're going to roll on. Boom, it's easy. You have X number here, Y number there. Subtract the two, boom, you've got your column, and then, of course, a modifier here or there. But it's really streamlined to make the flow of the game stay going instead of having to stop and check in the rules like, okay, what is this? What is that? Now, of course, there's a few niggles here or there with it, trying to make sure we've got everything flowing. And there is a lot of moving parts with the fact that you do have a lot of different factions in the game. You're not just having to worry about, NATO forces and Soviet forces. You've got a lot of special rules. I will say one of the issues I do have with this game is the same issue I have with Core Space, and the fact that there are a lot of symbols on some of the counters to indicate that they have certain special abilities. But the same type of issues I have with Core Space, it works itself out the more you play the game, and the fact that you're going to see those symbols more and more and more, so you're not going to end up looking them up that much. Yeah, you'll look them up at the start when you're first playing the game, but after a few rounds, it's really going to feel like second nature. But to have a game that's hex encounter, where I have tanks streaming up the road into a city going for the victory point, while at the same time there's a huge vampire tearing through the city, and zombies swarming around the city, and big bloaters that are getting blown up and taking out huge swathes of troops. That's awesome. That's a great experience. That's going to be something that's going to keep me coming back to a game like this. So yeah, The Long Road definitely gets a special mention on this one. Absolutely one worth checking out, because like I said, you're not going to have a whole lot of hex encounter stuff out there that's going to be bringing you a good quality paranormal type experience to it. The only other one I can think of off the top of my head is Heart of Darkness by Lock and Load Tactical. But I'm sure there are more games out there besides just this. They just aren't as numerous as I would like them to be. But hopefully more publishers will see the success of The Long Road and start putting out more games of this ilk. All right, but now we'll go ahead and end the video for 2022. I do hope you guys enjoyed it and like all the games I've got down. Stay tuned though, because I am going to be having some giveaways coming up before the end of the year. So if you're interested in winning a game or two, make sure you pay attention the next time we have our episode of Whiskey Charlie coming on. All right, that's going to be it for me. You guys take care. I will catch you in the next one.